I'm really excited to introduce the next panel led by Dilek. Let's go, guys. Building billion-dollar businesses outside of the Valley.
Gracias. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, welcome all to our panel on building billion-dollar companies out of Silicon Valley. And I have great panelists who created billion-dollar businesses or who are serial entrepreneurs, created really successful companies, and now they are on their way to create billion-dollar companies. And we have Telefónica here, who is helping ecosystem to create those successful startups. And I am Dilek Dayinlarli. I'm a venture capitalist focused on emerging markets for early-stage investments. And I am an optimist and realist. I believe in phenomenal success stories can come out of Silicon Valley or from anywhere, like athletes or artists, actually. The qualification required for a successful entrepreneur, like vision, courage, technical knowledge, and like ability to build a great team is a universal thing. And actually, we see it from the results too. Like when you look at the billion-dollar companies created after 2003, more than half of it coming from out of Silicon Valley, actually. And once I was talking one of the really successful Turkish entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who created like 3 in a row, more than $1 billion worth of companies. He told me that he was really lucky because they taught him how to become a really successful CEO and how to grow his company. Then, since then, it's like buzzing in my mind that we are missing biggest part in our ecosystems, which is mentorship. Like, we still can create huge opportunities, but how we can bring that mentorship to our like ecosystems. And I believe this panel it's going to be so exciting, and we should get most out of these guys and learn from their experiences. And I'm going to open the floor to tell about themselves a little bit, starting from Fadi.
So my name is Fadi Ghandour. I am the founder of a company called Aramex, which is one of the leading logistics companies in emerging markets, starting from the Middle East, eventually expanding into Africa, Asia, Australia, and everywhere else in the world. I took my company public on NASDAQ back in 1997, a long time ago, and then took it back out again, and then took it back public again on the Dubai Stock Exchange. So I did 2 IPOs, 1 private placements, and the leverage buyout, and I eventually ended up leaving the business as a CEO. I'm still the largest investor there, and now I am like you, a VC investing in seed stage and growth stage technology companies across the Middle East.
But also you co-founded the Maktub, which is one of the biggest exits of Middle East.
Yes, so I was the first investor and co-founder of Maktub, which eventually we sold. It was the first big exit for a Middle East company to Yahoo in 2009. So we survived the dot-com crash because we started during, it took us 10 years to exit. So you need to think about that. 10 years to exit your business. Don't be in a rush.
I'm going to come back, and I have a lot of questions. I'm sure they want to learn a lot too. And Rodrigo?
Hi, I'm Rodrigo del Prado. I'm one of the founders of BQ, a Spanish company dedicated to manufacturing smartphones mainly. We started the business 5 years ago. There were no exits yet. We don't want to exit because we love what we do. And the main thing about us is that we were able to start from 0 to 200 million euros last year without having any investment. So there's VC is an option, but there are also other options.
Okay. And Valentin?
Hi, my name is Valentin Fernandez. I am Global Head of Business Development and Partnership in Telefónica Open Future, which is the unit of Telefónica in charge of open innovation and promoting the innovation. And well, in terms of investments, we have already committed more than $300 million with more than 600 companies invested in different vehicles. And we continue to do many things, especially in Europe and Latin America.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'm going to pass to Paul.
Hi.
Hi.
I am Paul Ford. I am a lifelong entrepreneur, starting that journey a long time ago. Started really founding technology-based startups in the early 2000s, right after the bubble. Great time to found a startup company. No, not a good time. Did it anyway with my wife as a co-founder. Yeah, that was tough. And that's a whole nother panel. We'll get to that later. You know, to various degrees of success, you know, built some things, sold some things, built some things, sold some things, end up in a little company called Rackspace, and came in as corporate development, did some cool stuff there, helped build out the Rackspace Cloud ecosystem. Moved on from there to work with some friends of mine in Dallas, Texas, the non-Silicon Valley part of Texas. Dallas, Texas, a company called SoftLayer, infrastructure as a service company, as an early employee. And you know, we took that company and grew it very successfully from Dallas, eventually to a $2.3 billion exit to IBM. It was a good day to be a VP at SoftLayer. Planned to take some time off, that didn't happen, and jumped straight into another one, Techstars company from the 2009 class, the second class of Techstars, called Sendgrid, and now I'm the mailman. We send email. We send about 20 billion emails a month, and we're working on another billion-dollar company outside of Silicon Valley.
Adeyemi.
Hi, so my name is Adeyemi. I'm actually from Spain. I started my career here in Spain. I was one of the co-founders of 20, which is known as the Spanish Facebook, which we ended up selling to Telefónica in 2010. It was a very different time here in Spain when we started 20. There was no South Summit. In fact, I remember my first investors asking me, why did we need an office if we had a website? Why couldn't we do that from our house? So, you know, the country has changed for good. After 20, I went to Stanford and I started a company there in Silicon Valley called Identified. And Identified was essentially LinkedIn on top of Facebook. We created a recruiting tool that helped companies recruit the people that were not on LinkedIn and had Facebook profiles. Funnily enough, Fadi was one of our first investors. My co-founder met him in a Stanford study trip to the Middle East. And even more funny, this is the first time I'm meeting Fadi face to face. He actually, we talked on the phone before that.
It's the South Summit.
I know, right? So thanks again. And a year and a half ago, we sold Identified to Workday. So Workday is the largest competitor of Oracle in the US. It's essentially Oracle on the cloud. Very successful company, 15 billion, NASDAQ later. And we essentially became the Workday recruiting and analytics product. And I've been leading that as VP of technology for the past year. And most recently, I also started Workday Ventures, which is the Workday corporate fund focused on analytics and machine learning. On my personal time, I've also been investing and incubating in companies. In Spain, I'm a founding member investor of Cabify and Job and Talent. And in the US, I've invested in different companies like Instacar or RelateIQ, to name a couple of them.
Great. As you can see, we have a great panelists. And I want to start with Fadi. It's our token to our topic, actually. Like, you created billion-dollar company. And I really want to hear your story. Like, how did you start it? What it took to become a billion-dollar company? What was really important?
So I started the business back in the 80s before there was a fax machine. So you have to imagine, if you can, actually, the younger generation can imagine. If some people don't even know what a fax machine, I can explain to you later what a fax machine. We were working with telex machines then. So you can't even imagine what a telex machine is. But so we're in the logistics business by definition. From day one, you need to be global. So because you have to deliver a package from China to Dubai or to New York at the same time, because you're competing with multi-billion-dollar companies across the world. So we went out and focused on building a network across the Middle East initially, and we were delivering the delivery partner for FedEx, some of TNT, some UPS areas, and the other smaller courier companies across the world who needed a network in the Middle East and did not have one. We were the outsourcing arm of everyone that wanted a presence in the Middle East. So back in the 80s, when there was guidebooks that would tell you where the addresses are of companies. So if every single company on earth that was not DHL had us as their address. So we did business for everyone, effectively. And then we grew the business across the region, and then found a way to establish beachheads, we call them, in Europe, in the US, and in Asia, and effectively became the brand that we are in the Middle East. And then we were the first company to have ever gone public on NASDAQ from our part of the world outside of Israel. So how did we build the business? We are a non-asset-based business. So long before Uber discovered that you don't need to own anything to build the business, we basically said all these airlines are flying from one place to another, and they have empty space in their bellies, all of them, still until today. And then we can have all airlines in the world as our airlines. So we basically had space on each and every single airline that took us to every single city in the world. And we all needed to do is to have somebody on the ground to deliver that package to the client. So it was about people, eventually about technology, and eventually about innovation and being nimble and fast when you're competing with the multi-billion-dollar businesses that we were competing with. And effectively, we remained independent as the only, probably one of the few independent express logistics companies in the world today. So we're not owned by any of the big boys. We compete with them head on, and in fact, we beat them in many areas.
Amazing. What about Maktub?
So Maktub was, for those of you that don't know, Maktub was the internet company of the Arab world. It had the largest online Arab community. They invented Arabic email. There was no Arabic email in the old days. You couldn't type in Arabic and send an email, so they created that. And then we had tens of millions of adopters, just like you have them today. It rode on the back of Aramex, because the first investor was actually Aramex, not myself. When we took Aramex public on NASDAQ, the investment bank told me, why do you have this investment in this company that has nothing to do with the logistics business? I said, thank you very much, I'm going to take it for myself. So, and then eventually it became another massive business in and by itself. And then Yahoo came, and it was Yahoo's presence in the Arab world. They bought it in 2009.
I really wonder, as venture capitalists, we always say it takes really, really good team to build successful startups. And it's early days for Middle East in the internet domain. And how did you bring that team together? What was special about that team?
Well, the special thing about the team is that you had two founders who believed that they needed to build a business, not exit it. We were never even talking about exits until people came to us and said, you have a fantastic business, do you want to sell? So we were in the business of building the business, building the team, going global with it, building products, innovating, creating things. And then exits will come, as you build the business. So patience, perseverance, and founders that are going to be running the business and thinking about it rather than thinking about, okay, when am I going to build my next billion-dollar business? That's not the idea. When am I going to build a successful business? And then everything else comes along. So people will knock on your door when you build a successful business. You will look sexy very quickly when your business is doing well.
I actually, as a venture capitalist, you always create portfolio. You bet on different kind of companies. But for entrepreneur, I think all eggs should be in one basket. Like you should focus on your business for the early days, not just other stuff like or hype. And I think the focus is really important.
So hype worries me. I mean, you don't build for hype. You build for to last
Value and-
effectively, and assume that you want to last, and assume, just like my friend here, he says he's building a business and he doesn't need investors. Fantastic. And he built it from 0 to 100 million euros without investors, and he's building the business. I mean, it's simple. I mean, there is nothing complicated about that. You just need to think of it and forget all these stories that come out about, you know, here's a $1 billion business that happened in 1 week. You know, it just, or they valued at 500 times their revenues. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts.
Great. I want to ask you, Paul, because you have been through those cycles, like from early stage to $1 billion stage. Like, what have you seen? What it took those companies to become like $1 billion or successful companies at the end of the day?
I think that's, I mean, absolutely correct. Focus on building a great business. And, you know, whether it's, you know, I work with a lot of early stage companies as well, Techstars companies. I'm a Techstars mentor and a 500 startups mentor. And all of them, I say, look, there are really 3 things that you will be involved with. It's customers, revenue, and other. And other doesn't fucking matter. It's just customers and revenue. Focus on those 2
now
things.
we know what language we can use.
And build a great business, you know?
Example.
I think back to, you know, first dumb things is, you know, co-founding things with your wife or people like that. You know, learned that wasn't a good idea, that people don't like that. So moving forward to the soft layer experience, you know, that was a really cool gig to be an early VP. Right? I first came in running marketing, and then I moved on to build the global ecosystem as we took that beyond Dallas. But what was really interesting about that company, 10 co-founders, 10, right? Try doing 1 or 2, try 10, right? And they didn't kill each other. Again, back to the, you know, doing it with your co-founding with your wife, same kind of thing. 10 people is nuts to have, you know, as a team and try to get anything done. But the key there was they had a CEO, they had the lawyer, they had the infrastructure guy, they had each part of what you needed to run a data center-based infrastructure technology company were in the founding team. And the founding team were in the company all the way through the exit. Founded in 5505, Cinco de Mayo in Dallas, Texas, founded that day. They all quit their day jobs and founded SoftLayer. And you know, they thought they had a better way of doing things, and they built it on trust. They built it on building something better and building it in Dallas, Texas. They wanted to be there. It's, you know, really the crossroads of the U.S. internet. It's the home of the data center in the U.S. And you know, when they started the company, they thought they had this great idea. We're going to build this highly scalable infrastructure company, deploy physical servers anywhere in the world with APIs. This is great. Of course, we're going to quit our day jobs, and we're going to raise a bunch of money, and we can just do this. Couldn't raise a dime. No one would give them a dime. So they had already quit their jobs and said, okay, you know, we're going to have to do this anyway. Friends, family, credit cards, mortgaged houses. They founded the company in the living room of one of the founders' homes because they couldn't afford to have an office at that point in time, and started with 1 rack, 1 customer, in 1 little part of a data center, and focused on customers, focused on revenue, reinvested everything back into the company, had some very good friends and family that would help them keep going early on, but they were dedicated to doing what they were doing, and they really didn't have a choice. It's, you know, we have to do this. And just, again, focused on customers and revenue and building a great business, a great global business. And, you know, of course, a lot of this, the stars have to align a little bit, and the right place, the right time, the right idea, the right team, the right people. Eventually brought in a little bit of venture capital from a guy named Dean Mann at DH Capital, and you know, grew the business from nothing to, you know, 35 million to 75 million to 150 to 450 to a 200 or 2.3-ish billion dollar exit. And, you know, IBM full acceleration is basically they wrote a check for the company, And that's a pretty cool story.
Yesterday when we were talking, you mentioned that like when you become a real company, you need to know your numbers, like how you are gonna go, like what metrics you need to know. Like, can you just mention a little bit about them to the?
Somehow in this later part of my career, I've become the growth stage guy, right? Went from the early stage because growth stage issues are they're just different. When it's one thing to get from 0 to 50 million in revenue. That's hard. It's really hard to get from 50 to 100. That second growth stage phase is really hard to get through. And in the early stage, it's okay to spend a lot of money. And so it's okay to spend VC money, sorry guys, to focus on growth. But when you get to a certain point, the ratios become far more important. You want to maintain, to be in the wrong quadrant if you're thinking about some sort of a public thing or something else happening in the future. You don't want to be in the bottom right. You want to be in the top right or the top left at least. And you want to maintain a 30 to 40% growth rate, year-over-year growth rate. Those type of ratios. Customer acquisition cost becomes really important. All of the ratios and the margins become really important as you start to think ahead towards either public markets or something like that. Growth stage issues are just different. You have to focus on profitability. If you can get to that, if you can cross that magic line and you can be in the 30 to 40% growth rate and you can have a customer acquisition cost that it is a certain ratio, you're set up for good things to happen. You're set up to be a billion-dollar company. That's when you don't really think about being a billion-dollar company, you just think about growth rate success and what are the things that you have to really look at to achieve that.
And Adeyemi, you already co-founded 2 startups and made really successful exits at the end of the day. Like, how did you come up with those ideas and how was the experience during that growth stage till the exit?
So, how did I come out with the ideas? I think it's out of personal experience. In both of them, in 20 we're heavily influenced by Facebook after a bit, but in both cases, it was around in 20 the university experience in Madrid on identified what we had encountered in the recruiting market. The original ideas changed a lot over time, and I think that is typical. But the truth is that actually there were very contrasting experiences, building it in Spain and later building it in Silicon Valley. And in an interesting way, because in Spain, at the time we were kind of like the only ones doing a startup. And and that kind of allows to focus on the problem at hand, and only think about that and be obsessed about that. And I think that is a very good thing. We did a lot of stupid mistakes, and there was not a lot of people to ask questions to. I remember, for example, at one point, we were talking to an investor, and we were a close social network, like invitation only. And this investor was telling us, why are you not spending money on SEM? Because you want people that are Googling friends to find you and then go to your network. And we're like, well, that doesn't work because it's invite only. He's like, yeah, that doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. But anyway, but then in Silicon Valley, when I started there, it was kind of like the dream. Wow, I'm here at Stanford, have all these mentors, everyone knows this is amazing, investors know so much. And what I found is that it was actually a lot more difficult to focus on the things that really matter because there is too much noise. We fundraise every single year for the business, and it was really interesting for me to see how we started as a recruiting business, but then, I remember Quora and Zynga and Facebook and Twitter were very popular at the beginning. So all the investors were asking us about engagement. And we're like, well, we're a recruiting business. So it doesn't really matter. No, but your returning users are so important and your engagement is so important. You really have to think about engagement. So we're like, well, these people are geniuses, so they know, so let's build engagement tools. And then we spent a lot of money, building engagement tools, and we created game-like mechanics. And then we came back a year later, and we had look, now we're a recruiting business that have engagement. And they're like, yeah, what about big data and analytics? Because that's really important. Because look at what Palantir is doing, and look at what like these guys are doing. This is super important. So you have to focus on like big data analytics. I'm like, okay. So we went back, and we came back a year later, and we're like, look, now we're a recruiting tool that is like doing engagement and has like big data and analytics. And like the following year was something else. And like literally Silicon Valley is a place that if you don't filter out the noise, you can get really distracted because everyone seems to be doing better than you, and like every idea and every new thing seems to be like the place to go. And the truth is that at the end of the day, we only really started doing things well when we focus on what problem are we solving. We just want to help people to hire. So if we just do that well, it doesn't matter. And it seems super simple, but when you're there and when everyone is telling you what everyone else is doing and like comparing you to everyone else, it's really, really hard to filter out the noise.
Also, when we were talking yesterday, you mentioned that one of the struggle that you had, not being able to talk to other peer entrepreneurs, because like my entrepreneurs, they call me like in the middle of the night and they just want to talk to, like they want to hear a sounding board, what, I don't know, like I want to be there too, but I believe that they are really missing that they can talk to someone who has been through that crazy time, like up and downs, like a roller coaster. And like you mentioned that it's really hard to find in Spain, but how did you like find the right person to talk to? Was it like peer entrepreneurs or your VCs or?
Yeah, so again, different experiences. In Spain, it was just hard to find people that had done it before. Fortunately enough, we found a few that had similar experiences, and maybe they were not able to coach at Matt on the product, but yes, on the overall experience of growing a company, which is even more important. In Silicon Valley, again, was kind of the reverse problem, like because you will talk to a lot of people, but you couldn't be honest with most of them because you have to be killing it all the time. So when like they ask you about you're there for advice, but it kind of have to be like, well, how's your company doing? Because like I was talking to your investor and I was talking to this other guy, so you're like, oh well, you were doing great. We're killing it. We have like tons of engagement and like analytics and like it's amazing. And basically like every meeting is like a fundraising meeting or a recruiting meeting, and it's exhausting. Because even when you are hanging out socially, because everyone is in technology, you never know what word is going to get out. And at some point, we were actually doing okay, and I was extremely depressed.
You always have to be on.
Yeah, because you always have to be on, and you end up feeling like an idiot all the time because everyone seems to be killing it. So at some point, I had a conversation with one of my neighbors who happened to be running one of the coolest billion-dollar companies out there. And he actually was having a bad day and told me like, dude, I think there are like 5 things that could kill me tomorrow, and like this guy wants to leave, and I don't think I know what I'm doing. And that made me feel so good that after that, in every single meeting that I had, and when the person said, yeah, like we're doing great, I was like, really? I'm doing everything wrong. I was like, I think I'm dying. Like, look, like my clients, like don't want to pay, and like my team thinks I'm a moron, and my investors don't want to give me money, but Fadi, who was great, and like, all the things are happening, and that kind of like flips the switch on everyone's mind because they're like, oh, you too? and to me, that made me a way happier, like person, and actually allowed me to like, have an honest conversation about advice. So I think that's very important, and I think that between founders, there should be like a self-help club, because it's hard.
Thank you for sharing, by the way. And I want to turn to Rodrigo about BQ's story. How did you start it, and how it's growing fast without VC money, and what do you want to do now? You are in a really competitive space.
Well, we started when we left the engineering school. And in that moment, what we have, our asset was brain, hands, and will to do something by ourselves, because we don't want to end working for a big company. So university students, professors, they buy computers, let's make computers. Let's assemble computers and sell to these people because they are buying computers. Instead of buying there, they will buy here because it's closer. And you know that the main difference is the guy on the shop was always hungry because the queues are so long, maybe he's not getting paid well. So going there to buy is a problem, okay? Come here to buy, I will smile you, and it's close, so it's not kind of big idea. I think it's more important the way you make it than the idea you may have, because we want to, I don't know, travel across the universe. Okay, nice idea, but how can we make the Starship? So in that moment, we were buying this for 4 and selling it for 5. So if you have customers, that customers are satisfied, you can run the business. Okay, but you may think, okay, I buy it for 4, I pay it today, I give it to the customer when he's paying me. That's a problem. You may need working capital. Okay, then tell the customer you have to prepare. You have to pay something on advance because I'm customizing this for you. It's kind of buying a tailored suit. You have to pay some deposit, right? For sure, you have to offer something different. In that case, was service. That guy is hungry, long queue, here nice people, and short queue. So service was the thing we can offer and trade it off for getting paid. So we don't need working capital, and that capital, that benefit we are getting, we use it to make our own website so that we can sell through it, and that's the story prior to BQ. And in BQ, you use the same. We have some money from the previous company, and BQ started more or less doing the same. Instead of computers and USB flash drives, were e-readers that are more expensive. But keeping in mind you have to service people, is nice because if something happens, you can solve it. So we start, as in that moment we were not able to change the product. We were taking existing product because making a product from the scratch is expensive. We were okay, let's focus on the service. So let's select the best product, let's check that product is going to be good, and then build a nice service facility here, so if something happens. So then tablets come, 2010, and iPad, and the rest. So we moved to that business in that moment also as distribution plus servicing company, and trying to give the best experience price relationship, but still with our hands tied because we were not able to make the experience we want. And the smartphones came into the scene. So the smartphone is totally different thing because maybe it's pacemaker, glasses, and a smartphone in order of use per day, right? Smartphone, we are with a smartphone all day. So smartphones are more complicated than tablets, and smartphones are in our hands for 8 hours a day. If something happened to the smartphone, it's not the same that if something happened to the tablet, because the tablet is at your house. So 1 week without tablet, nothing happens. 1 hour without smartphone, you are like, where's my dose, right? So in that moment, we decided if we want to survive in that business, we should be able to make and take all the decisions that make the smartphone as it is. So we should design the smartphone from the scratch, stop buying, let's say, white-label smartphones and start designing from the scratch. And that's the most difficult jump we have to make because we have to hire more engineers, 300 people. Nobody has been doing smartphones in Europe never, because when the smartphones came, there were no European companies making phones, no more. So everybody relying on China manufacturers or Asia manufacturers. The point was, at that moment, we have been running the business for 3 years, BQ, the previous business, so we have enough capacity to hire that people without having to raise funds for. So we have a running business. We were increasing step by step the business. So 2014, we launched our first series of smartphones. They became the best-selling smartphone in Spain on the SIM-free market. thanks to that experience cost relationship, a lot of satisfied customers. They are speaking with other customers, and it's kind of a net. So one satisfied customer speaks with 4 friends, and 4 satisfied customers speak with 4 friends, and you make it this, and in 2 years you have 2 million customers that we have in Spain now. And the point was why for us, that we think we are not the most smart in the world, but we are not stupids, right? So how can it take us so long to be able to make our own products? Why? Because we have money, not tons of money, but we have money. That we don't need to search for the money. We have customers, so we can sell our products to that people. And we realized that, okay, a product is based on hardware, it's based on software, and it's based on design, on mechanics, on art, if you want. For the software, there are tools. So there are thousands of startups making software. Why? Because that kids, when they were kids, they have a computer, then they need how to solve things with software. But on the hardware side and on the design side, there were no tools when we were small, right? Now they are tools. They are 3D printers, they are electronic boards. So what I can say is leverage on that, the newcomers leverage on that, because it's not like you have an idea, you make a software that fixes that, you need to make a prototype and then ask for money to make the prototype. You can make your prototype in your living room with a printer that costs less than an Xbox or a PlayStation 4, and with a board that costs 30 euros, and you can connect cable by cable, so no need to solder. So it's, now we have a wider range of opportunity, and that will apply in any business, because technology products will be in any business.
Actually, yesterday Wozniak was telling about not having money makes you more innovative and create better value at the end of the day.
You have no ways. I mean, if you don't have no money, you cannot pay nobody to do that, so you have to do it by yourself. Maybe you make mistakes, but you learn. Yeah. So also making mistakes, okay, it's nice. If you know it's a mistake, don't make it, because mistakes makes you learn, right? But I know if I jump from the first floor, I will break my leg, so don't test it, right? I know it's gonna happen. The point is, try to make mistakes and realize that they are mistakes fast and spend little money on that. So don't go all in each decision, because if you go all in each decision, you may make the wrong decision, but it's like...
I actually, yesterday I was watching SpaceX panel. I was really amazed. Like, she was talking about when the Falcon 19 destroyed. In US, it was a success somehow, because they were able to land it at that point, even it's gone. But in Europe, everybody was talking about as a failure. And as a group, we were talking yesterday, in US, failure is more accepted. Actually, it's not, I believe. Like, in US, when you take more risks, it's more acceptable. Like, people take more risks and try things instead of hedging themselves.
I think I don't think everybody's worried about failure. It's how you view the process of failure. So if you're looking at it as a journey of learning, then it's a must that you are actually going to fail. If you look at it as an end, then you're going to commit suicide.
Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest problems that we have. Yeah, definitely.
Trial and error is part and parcel of life. Everything you do in life is trial and error. So you take that and apply it to startups.
Yeah.
I think if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah, not trying, for sure. And I would love to ask you, Telefónica is doing like really great stuff in the ecosystem and trying Spain and in other markets to foster those ecosystems. And how do you see that, like, is there big opportunities to create like those successful startups out of here from this ecosystem?
Well, I think one, definitely yes. I think it's absolutely possible to have unicorns here out of the Silicon Valley or the United States. But from the corporate angle, like Telefónica One as investors, I think one of the things that we can help more is not only to put money on the companies, but also to introduce them into our, core business. This is open innovation, and this is not easy, but I think it's worth to try it because it's a win-win situation for everybody. For startups, which obviously they are going to grow much more, quickly and much quicker and on a more intense way. For us as a corporate, because we are going to introduce new services and products for our customers. We are going to introduce the startups that they have at the beginning a problem of customer directly through our more than 300 customers potentially, which is I think is a huge push to our startups. And finally, it's also good for a manager if they are also fund manager because the performance fee they are going to be higher, no? Because of the growth of the startups. So I think this is a very important point for a corporate as investor for the ecosystem in order to help companies to become global. And then I absolutely agree with you that you have to think in global terms as a company. And thinking in global terms for me meaning be ambitious, but to have a product that is going to solve a need of millions of people. And this is absolutely critical to keep in mind since the beginning. What's your mission, and how many people they are going to be happier with my product in the world? The potential market, no? So I think this is also very important, and for helping the companies to become a billion company, I think also it's very important the venture capital funds of growth. I think maybe in Europe, especially here in Spain, now we are starting to see this kind of funds. I think there's still a lot of space for this kind of growth funds, and they are absolutely necessary to help the companies to become global. Fortunately, I think now we are starting to see also very big international growth funds that they are coming over here. And I think definitely this is going to be very important for these non-US companies to receive this financing and to become global players. Yeah.
Before I close the panel, I actually want to ask all of you the last question. What would be really critical important point that you give as an advice? And please give some tactics with it, not just say team is really important, but other than that, tell them what it takes to create that value.
Team is really important.
Then how do you recruit that team?
Musica, yo?
But it's the truth. Look,
Yo salgo.
my advice to every startup is that if you raise money, that doesn't mean you're successful. You need to back to the basic story that we started with. Building a business is extremely hard. Yeah. The work-life balance is going to be thrown out of the window because it doesn't work. And anybody that's giving you advice that you have to balance both, I know you try because you have a baby, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's hard.
Building a startup and then continuing to become a CEO or for the long run, it means you are going to be responsible for people of outside of your immediate domain, and they become in some sort of a way much more important than your inside. You need to be very careful about your life, and I tell that to every entrepreneur. Every person that comes to me, I say, are you ready for the kill? Because you are going to be really suffering miserably, as we heard from Adi earlier, from building the business. Otherwise, go become an employee.
I actually see it as a video game. It has different levels. Entrepreneurs always think that it's like when they raise funding from venture capitalists, they think it's over. They are successful, but then there's another level that you have to do all different stuff again from all over from the beginning.
There's always somebody that is going to disrupt you and eat your lunch and kill you. Yeah. So you'd better be alert 24 hours a day. Okay. You can't keep your eye off the ball for a second.
Okay. Is there any advice that, how did you do that then?
Did I do that?
Yeah.
I'm addicted now, so
You are addicted to work?
I can't. This is it. I am on a plane all the time. I'm an investor. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I'm a founder, so I'm a mentor. So I feel like I'm a dentist. If you come to my office, there is every half an hour somebody knocking on my door and eating my lunch.
Okay, thank you. And Rodrigo?
I'm totally agree. So it's like, it's not 24 hours, it's 24 hours by 7, by 365, by N. And N is not 1 year, it's not 2 years. It has been, for me, at least 12 years. So the key is make something that you love, because you are going to do it for the rest of your life. Money is important. Yes, money is important. Finances is important, but that's like breathing. We human beings need to breathe, right? But if you are going to ask somebody who is going to die, what did you do in your life? And he says, breathe, it's sad, right? So you should, make something that cares.
For you.
Yes.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, it's a combination of private and non-private time in your life, no? And it's something which is very close and difficult to define. This time is for me at home. This time is at the office. In the end, you have to work endless, basically, because many times you have to face many to attend different deals or operations in different parts of the world with different times. So it's really difficult to conciliate and to coordinate with your private life. But I think it's definitely the business as so. So we have to.
And what would be your biggest advice, Paul?
I think I have a couple of them, if I can do two. Sure. Is that cool? The first one, I think, is seeking out great mentorship. You want great mentors. And not just somebody that you think, man, he's just such a nice guy. No, you need mentors that have contextual and relevant experience in the domain that you're entering. For instance, if I'm doing a hardware startup, I don't want to seek out a mentor who comes from fintech. Something that's contextual and relevant that will help you build a successful business. That's the first one. The second one, and I know as entrepreneurs this is going to be a tough thing to do, but learning to say no to venture capital and certain kinds of capital. You want smart money. You want smart money that is connected in the area that you want to be successful in my experience. There's a lot of dumb money out there. I've taken private equity money. Oh, that's another whole conversation. But smart money and great mentors. And that's part of what attracts me to systems like Techstars, or like the things that David Brown and David Cohen and Brad Feld are doing. Those systems. Telefónica has been doing this here, and we've been working together for the last 3 or 4 years in this region. And providing smart, intelligent, connected mentors is key. And that's why I think those systems can be so important, especially to younger entrepreneurs that have not gone down this journey yet. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to take on capital, make sure it's smart capital. Make sure they can do something for you beyond just the money.
Yeah, perfect. And
I also have a couple, I think, related to what I said before. I think the first one is around prioritizing and cutting all the noise. Because basically, I think that in any given week, there are going to be like 500 things that you have to do. And probably like 450 of them are actually good for your company. Because, you can like talk to some investor, try to recruit an employee, talk to a client, go to a PR event, read something. But the truth is that you can probably only do well like 1 or 2. And that is really harsh. Like, saying like, Steve Jobs was in town, and he's going to have this great conference. You should go and listen. No, because this week I am only going to be taking client interviews, and the rest doesn't matter. My investor is calling me, I'm not going to take the phone. It doesn't matter. And that is super hard to do. When you are in the moment, it's like, this is life or death. Like, I have to do it. But the truth is that usually very successful people only do like 1 or 2 things really, really well. And when there is a lot of noise, that is hard. And then related to that is that you have to think of yourself as a very limited resource. Because we're not superhumans. We actually cannot work 24 hours a day. That is actually impossible. And people expect you to. And some people actually say that they do. They're like, no, I sleep 3 hours. And like, no, that's not true. And like, you will get sick. Like, I actually got sick out of stress for 6 months. I had chronic pain starting my company in Silicon Valley. It was awful. And it was a stress. And it's just super important to know, like, there are only 1 or 2 things I'm going to do this week. Like, well. And I actually have to be rested, and I actually have to, like, be focused and have energy. So very tactically think about that.
To summarize all, we are saying, like, focus, prioritize, and think advance that this is going to be a really tough journey, and your life balance is going to be really tough. And find really great mentors and find smart money at the end. And I would love to thank you, my panelists, and have a good day.